And classical education is it's just education. It was the way education was for almost 2,000 years. It was founded by the Greeks, and it was systematized by the Romans and then perfected by the church over the course of 2,000 years. And it takes the greatest works of Western civilization, think the Iliad and the Odyssey and Robin Hood and King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and these really rich literature, and it brings it in and fosters the imagination of the kids, but in a world where there's right and wrong, where you understand how one ought to live their life, and they ought to live lives of virtue.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Real Pasadena Podcast. This show is dedicated to sharing the experiences of local business owners and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs here in Pasadena, Maryland, and beyond. My guest on this episode is Ali Ghaffari, founder of Divine Mercy Academy. Ali is not only the visionary behind Divine Mercy Academy, but also brings a unique perspective as a former Navy pilot flying the F-18. His journey from military service to educational entrepreneurship is one marked by determination, innovation, and a commitment to excellence. In our interview, Ali shares the remarkable story of how Divine Mercy Academy came to be, from its humble beginnings in a borrowed church space to becoming a beacon of classical educational excellence in Pasadena. He discusses the challenges faced in starting a school from scratch, the importance of community support, and his vision for the school's future as a leader in the classical education movement. To learn more about the school, schedule a tour, or make a donation, please visit divinemercy.md. This episode is sponsored by Buxton Media Productions, your one-stop shop for video production, podcasting, and editing services. Whether you're looking to produce a promotional video for your business, create more consistency with your social media content, or even start your own podcast, Buxton Media Productions has everything you need to get started. They even have a local studio right here in Pasadena where we're recording this podcast. To learn more, visit them online at buxtonmediaproductions.com. Ali, thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming out and being on the podcast. You have kind of an amazing and interesting story for a lot of reasons, having your military career and flying fighter jets to starting a school, which I kind of shared with you. I didn't know you could even start a school. Mm-hmm. I went to public school. I just kind of thought they always existed until we found Divine Mercy Academy and realized your story and that, oh, wow, you can actually start a school and it is a business. Mm-hmm. So I do want to get into some of the similarities and intricacies of running a school as a business and what that looks like. But why don't you share with the audience a little bit about, your story, getting started, maybe your schooling experience, mm-hmm. which led to joining the Navy and then becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, James. I am a poor kid from Vermont. Parents divorced when I was young, but thankfully, my stepfather, he came in and he emphasized education. So that was my first experience with education being something of value, and I was about 9 years old. And along that, so I was in public schools, and then he put me into one of the top private schools in the country. So that was and that experience launched me from poverty into getting into a very good college up in Maine. And then out of there, I joined the Navy and did 20 years in the Navy. And so I basically went from this, impoverished family to being a military officer, and education was that vehicle that launched that.
So why join the Navy if you were getting this great education? Why not just go right into getting a career or starting a business?
So when I was very young, I loved Star Wars, and Luke Skywalker was my hero, and I wanted to save the universe in an X-Wing fighter. But I tucked that dream away for a while, and my parents said, in order to escape poverty, you should become a doctor or do something where you can make enough money where you're not poor like we are. And so that was my goal, was to become a doctor. And one day in college, I met a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL turned eye surgeon. And in fact, he was a Naval Academy graduate. And we hit it off, and he said, and he knew that I wanted to become a doctor. And he said, hey, how do you plan to pay for medical school? And I said, just more loans. And he said, well, you should have the Navy pay for it, the military pay for it. They'll send you to medical school. You won't have any debt. You come out after 4 or 5 years, you get your medical degree and no debt. I said, that sounds amazing to me. So I took the MCAT, and then the next day I walked into the recruiting office in Waterville, Maine, and I sat down, and as I was explaining to the recruiter, my plan, I wanted to go to medical school. My eyes just rested on this beautiful image of an F-18 on the wall, and all those dreams of flying X-wing fighters just rushed back in my head, and I kind of stopped in the middle of it, and I said, is there any way I can fly one of those? And the recruiter said, well, sure, you just take this test. We'll see what you qualify for. And I took the test, and he said, yeah, you absolutely could fly one of those if you wanted to. He said, sign me up. That looks like a lot more fun than going to medical school.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of qualifications do they look at to fly a plane? Because it's something I think every boy, including myself, dreams about. It's just super cool, right? But I've never thought of myself as very good at like math and physics, and I don't even know if I could qualify. So what was that like to just, you saw it, you wanted it, and then you had to go achieve it, but I'm sure it wasn't easy, right?
Certainly. I mean, getting in, you need to have your college degree. That's one of the basic requirements in order to be an officer in the Navy. So I had to have that, and I was well on my way of getting that done. And then they have a basic, introductory test just to see where you place and see if you have to qualify for that. And then they did a psychological analysis of you. And in fact, the Marine recruiter was giving me advice. He said, go read Chuck Yeager's autobiography and then answer the questions as if you're Chuck Yeager. So when I read his autobiography and then answered all these questions, and really Chuck Yeager is just a gutsy guy, and just aggressive.
So who is Chuck Yeager? I'm not familiar.
Oh, sorry. Chuck Yeager is the guy who broke the sound barrier. He was an experimental test pilot, Air Force. He's a legend in Air Force, piloting. And so among pilots, he is one of the original pioneers of, flying really at the very edge. Yeah. And so having that, mindset of, I want to push the limits. And so, which fit me pretty well. That's, fit my personality. I think probably most young men, you just want to test, can I handle this, right?
I want to go fast and, nothing can hurt me, right?
Yeah, I light my hair on fire. I'm invincible. So that fit me pretty well. And then the last thing was, they didn't care so much about, the hardcore, can you answer this physics problem or anything like that. Just doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because when you're flying an F-18, you're not doing that, right? The computers are solving those things for you. You really have to just understand, what is my orientation in space? How do I get to where I need to be? Can I take in large swaths of information and then make prudent decisions very quickly? And can I do really gutsy things and very with a very short period of time? And so that's really what it takes to be a pilot and a Navy pilot, because you're doing just insane things like landing on an aircraft carrier, which is a very small piece of real estate to be landing an aircraft on at over 150 miles an hour. So.
And what about physically? Because I've seen videos of people just like blacking out.
Yes.
They take guests up and they're just like, oh, they're out.
Yeah.
What is that like? Oh, the G-forces and all that.
It is. It's like when you finish a really intense workout. You're exhausted. You're sweaty, and because you've got a whole bunch of gear on, and then you've got the G-forces that are just always on you. Anytime you move from wings level, you basically have some G-forces. And when you're flying an F-18 or any other jet aircraft, you're putting a lot of G's on. So you're putting 7, 8, in some cases 9. That would exceed the F-18, but sometimes you do exceed your G limits on the aircraft. And and then you have to try to maintain consciousness while you're doing that. So you have certain techniques that you use in order to maintain consciousness, because if you lose it, then you lose, potentially lose your life. So it's real.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're flying F-18s in the Navy. Any interesting stories from that? What was the highlight, I would say? Yeah, so the highlight of my time in the Navy, I spent 20 years in the Navy, and the first 15 were flying. And the highlight for me was we did operations in Afghanistan in the fall of 2001.
2008. Fall of 2008, we were there deployed in the USS Ronald Reagan off the coast of Pakistan and in the Indian Ocean. And there we were supporting an operation. We were escorting some turbines for a hydroelectric plant that was based they called it the Kajaki Dam. I think the Kajaki was the name of maybe the reservoir that it created a little bit of a lake there. But that hydroelectric dam had 3 turbines, and one was working, one had never been installed, the other one was frozen, like it had been rusted up and had not been maintained properly. And so we had flown some turbines into Kandahar, and now we need to get these are massive turbines, and we had to get all of the turbines through the heart of enemy territory, Taliban territory, to this dam where they could install them. And so it was a convoy of something in the neighborhood of 100 massive vehicles driving through the heart of enemy territory at about 3 miles an hour over the course of 2 weeks. And so the Air Force was doing overwatch during the day. We were doing overwatch at night. We had helicopters there. We had special forces. We had regular Army units. We had international peacekeepers. It was a really big deal. And so the mission was exciting. We get to, once we got the turbines there, then the people in the area would get electricity for more than, they would have rolling electricity. They never knew when they'd have it. It could be in the middle of the night. It could be in the middle of the day. So these folks, their quality of life would be increased tremendously if we were able to succeed in this mission. And so every night, we would brief up, okay, where's the convoy? How are we doing? What's the enemy picture look like? I do remember, one of the missions, we arrived on scene. They were called a TIC, a Troops in Contact. And one of the Canadian peacekeepers had their Humvee had been blown up by an IED. The Taliban had blown it up, and it blew up just prior to us arriving. So they called us on in what we call a kill box. They called us in the kill box, and so we were there overhead. But another section or a 2-ship of aircraft from my own squadron were there when it happened, and they had dropped a bomb and just vaporized the 8 or 10 Taliban who were sitting in a field who had set off the IED. So that provides some solace. But at the same time, I just felt I was very upset by the loss of this peacekeeper. I'd never met him before, and I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But you just feel when you're in that situation, supporting troops on the ground, you just feel very close to them, and it feels like what you do matters a great deal. And so for me, that was a great highlight. Not that particular incident, but just being there and just felt like I was a part of history and a part of something that made a difference for people all over. So that was great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay. Well, let's transition now from your military career to starting a school. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? How did you make that decision? And then, just let's hear it.
So about halfway, maybe to the earlier part of my career, I met a beautiful woman, and we got married, and we had 3 amazing daughters. And so we would, schooling never really mattered to me until I had kids, right? I mean, sure. I had my own schooling, but I just didn't care the difference between one elementary school from another one. I couldn't, tell you the difference. And but we would, every time we moved, every couple of years, we moved to a new place. I'd say, well, what's the best school here? Where do I put my kids? And so we, when we're Catholic, so we wanted to find the best Catholic schools in the area. So we would move from place to place, and we moved to the local area, and we put our kids in. We thought it was the best Catholic school, and then very shortly in, I realized, gosh, this is not what I'm hoping for. This wasn't what I was hoping for education for them.
What was it that kind of made you realize that? Was it just the kids' behavior, or what was it that triggered this isn't working for me?
For me, the important part was their faith. I really wanted them to have a rich faith, and I'm a convert to the faith, and I came into the church by reading Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and just understanding how to reason and how to think clearly through the classics. And then secondly, just the importance of the practice of the faith. And neither of those things were particularly strong. The teachers were wonderful. I think it was a blue ribbon school. The sports program was excellent. They had some really great families there. But I just didn't feel like the priority of the school was to get my kids to heaven. And that was my goal. And I think if as a Catholic, if your kids don't get to heaven, then by any account of your own, if there's anything you can do about it and you fail to do that, then that's a really heavy burden to bear. And that's not one that I wanted to bear. And then I had this experience of my siblings had gone to a very lukewarm Catholic school as well, and then they all left that school without faith at all, or at least the practice of the faith. And I said, that's not what I want for my kids. And I think that story's replicated in a lot of across the country, where you step into a Catholic school and you've got a religion class and a crucifix on the wall, but that's pretty much it, and the faith isn't presented in a way that's compelling, that helps you live a better life, or to provide answers to those deep questions at the center of our hearts. And so I wanted something that presented the faith in a wonderful and substantial manner to my kids, that they wanted to believe in God and they wanted to live the life of a saint. And so for 3 years I struggled over this. I said, what am I going to do? Like I don't care if my kids get into Harvard. Like that's not the goal of things. I want them to be happy. I want them to have fulfilling lives. I want them to be people of virtue. That's what I care about. And I want them to love God. And, so, I heard about this classical method, and I was reading a book called The Benedictine Option, and they told about this Catholic school in Hyattsville, Maryland, that was ready to close. It was like many other Catholic schools across the country that, just had a religion class and a crucifix on the wall, and they were about to close, and some parents got together with some faculty and said, what if we tried this classical methodology? And I didn't know anything about classical methodology, but really just in short, classical education is it's just education. It was the way education was for almost 2,000 years. It was founded by the Greeks, and it was systematized by the Romans and then perfected by the church over the course of 2,000 years. And it takes the greatest works of Western civilization, think the Iliad and the Odyssey and Robin Hood and King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and these really rich literature, and it brings it in and fosters the imagination of the kids, but in a world where there's right and wrong, where you understand how one ought to live their life, and they ought to live lives of virtue, and they're inspired by that, and they're drawn into it, and that's
just
what I want.
Hearing that story.
Yeah, it is.
Great.
It's great, and it's something just I think would take care of, and we've seen takes care of so many behavioral issues, because it's just material. It's interesting and rich that kids love. And it's an invitation. I invite you. What do you notice about this? What do you think about King Arthur? What do you think about whomever? And the kids are invited in, and they're partners, and they're on this journey together. It's not this sense of education, and this is the education that I got, which was, here's the material that you have to have in your heads that we're going to test you on at the end of the semester. And so I just crammed, I regurgitated it, and then I moved on. And I was really good at that, but I can't tell you that I really internalized the material that I learned. And I couldn't tell you much of what I learned in my education.
Sounds familiar.
So it's just, I found that was a waste. And I can't tell you that I emerged out of my education as a better human being. And I don't feel like I was educated, and those are hard things to say. Yeah. And I had some amazing teachers, and I don't blame the teachers. I just think the system has gone off the rails.
What's up, Pasadena? I'm James Bowerman, your Pasadena Realtor and host of the Real Pasadena Podcast. As a lifelong resident, I've experienced firsthand what makes our town such an amazing place to live, work, and play. As a local real estate agent, having the opportunity to serve so many wonderful people in our community is truly a great honor. If you're thinking about making a move, let me show you how my knowledge and experience can help you achieve your real estate goals. To learn more or to schedule a private consultation, please visit realcreativegroup.com.
There's a history behind that I learned later on. And the educational system went off the rails starting in the 1900s. And so what the education that we all have received is not the way education has always been. It's just something that's new. It's experimental.
Yeah.
And it has lost a great deal of the heart and soul of what education was in the past. And so I heard about this and I said, gosh, I want that for my kids. But there were no schools in the area that had that education.
So going back, the parents came in and they said, we're going to try the classical education model. And I'm assuming that was a success, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing me back to that. So they instituted this model, and they turned it around in the next year. And then that school has boomed and has grown every year since. It's one of the largest schools in the Archdiocese.
And where was this?
Hyattsville, Maryland.
Okay.
They've spawned a high school. People moved from around the country to put their kids in that school. And they said, that's it. That's what I want for my kids. And so I looked around. They had a 2-day-a-week tutorial, St. Thomas Aquinas tutorial in Millersville. And I went to visit, and I said, this is amazing. I was in the classroom, and the kids were just critically thinking, and they were asking deep questions. And I was like, they were making connections from one thing to another. This is incredible. I want my kids to have this education. But they had a waiting list for all their grades, and it was a 2-day-a-week, and my wife works full-time, and I work full-time. It's like, how am I going to make this happen? And so I get to the end of the day, and I said, hey, do you guys have any chance you're going to expand your offerings? They said, no, we're exhausted just getting to the point that we are, but we think the time is right, and maybe you're the person to start a school. And so that was just how it hit me.
What?
And so what am I? I've never started a school before. I don't know the first thing about education. Like, what do I do? But this love of my kids just prevailed. And so I discerned, I just had to think about this and pray about it. And I went to a conference about classical education. I just was further impressed. And then a woman sat down next to me at that conference and said, I heard you're thinking about starting a school. Do you want some help? And I said, yeah, let's do this. So now where do you start? Where you've got no knowledge, you have no understanding, where do you start? And so we started with a survey just to see who might be interested in this type of education and what would that look like. And so we had a session, we had interested families come together, and we just dreamed what that could look like. So we kind of just took a white piece of paper and we dreamed what our ideal school would look like. And that was a lot of fun.
Just like a startup.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Right. And then, okay, so what do we do next? And someone said, I think we need to get some articles of incorporation, and we need to establish a 501c3. So we went to the IRS and we got into 501c3. Okay, what's next? So we need to talk to an attorney to get all of our documents, squared away. So we talked to an attorney. And then someone said, I think we needed to talk to the Maryland Department of Education. So we went to them and we filled out the application. We did all the certification things. Well, we need to recruit students and teachers now. So we started doing all of those things. And so now we're working tax elements, we're working legal elements. Now we're talking about starting a business. We need to bring money in. We need to start raising money. We need to get certifications. We need to recruit. We need to do sales, right? So that's admissions. I had nothing to show. I'm so shocked that anybody decided to put their kids in our school, because we had literally nothing to show them with regard to what it could be. And so we were selling vaporware essentially. Yeah, we didn't have anything. But families saw the vision that we were casting, and it said, I want that. So you're
recruiting students before you actually had a place to teach them, right?
Yeah, we had no location. We had to find, so commercial real estate is so expensive. And they were talking $200,000 for, a small space a year. We had nothing. So we called all the churches in the area and said, hey, do you have any space that we can use? We called 31 churches. 30 said no. And one said yes. Our Shepherd Lutheran on Benfield Avenue in Severna Park said, yes, you can come and just pay what you can. And they were wonderful people to work with. And so we started our school there.
That was at the garage.
That was very small.
Start up in the garage.
Yeah, exactly. We started with 19 students. We had one full-time teacher and 3 part-time teachers. And we started with a homeschool curriculum, and we just launched, and we had 2 classes. And but the interest continued to grow. COVID hit in the middle of that first year. And so we had to go online and shift to, what that looked like. We had our first graduation online. But then, people heard that we were having in-person classes, and they said, we want to put our kids in your school. So we started to increase enrollment and started to go up. We were looking at 40, 50 kids. And then our Shepherd Lutheran, due to COVID, said we can't have as many people on campus as we had before. And so they put a limitation of no more than 10 people on campus or 3 people in a classroom. And I can't run a school that way. Absolutely doesn't work. So we had to find another location. And so for about 6 weeks at the beginning of our second year, we were homeless. We were looking in Baltimore. We were looking in Annapolis. We were looking in Bowie. We were all over. We could not find a place that would fit our budget and our size. Someone said, hey, why don't you look out in Pasadena at St. Jane Francis de Chantal? Their school had just closed due to COVID, unfortunately. And so we called, and the pastor there was very kind, and he said, we've just closed the school. The paperwork's not even finalized. We really don't have space for you. So, we saddened. We looked away. We were looking in Severna Park. There was the old Heat Cardio studio there next to the donut shop, donut shack. And we were about to sign a lease there out of complete desperation. And someone said, hey, just why don't you ask him again down at St. Jane Francis in Pasadena. So we did, and we did a tour of the facility, and there was a convent there that had been used by the nuns, the sisters who had taught the students there some time ago, decades ago. And there was room available in there. We said, Father, can we use this space? And he said, yeah, that would be easy. And you sure this works for you? And we said, absolutely. So we took a weekend, and we all hands on deck. We renovated the facility. We cleaned it all up. We made classrooms. We put desks in there. And we started in the middle of October and just made it happen. And 2 weeks prior to that, we had started school, but it was in my house. We had a bounce house in the front yard. We had kids running all over. It was absolutely crazy. But we made it through. And we started our second year with 34 students. And then the year after that, we were able to move into the former school building. And that year we had 85 students. And then the following year we had 112 students. And now we have 140 students. And next year we're looking to have between 170 and 190 students. So we're just growing hand over fist. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's incredible. So what were some of the challenges of starting a school? And specifically, I remember talking to you about, it's not a public school. Public schools get government help, right? Mm-hmm. This is, you have to raise all the money yourself. So what does that look like in starting a school and fundraising and support? Is there anything like that exists, or is it all just, you're fundraising and you're getting tuition and all that stuff?
Yeah. So it sounds so naive, but I didn't realize I was starting a business. I just thought, hey, I'm going to start this school. It's going to be amazing. And then it's all going to work just beautifully. The money's just going to flow in. We're going to be able to pay our teachers and everything.
Ignorance is bliss.
He's completely clueless on all that. And as we got into the first year, it hit me that this was actually we had started a business, and but we had to make some major sacrifices. We didn't have enough money to go into the first year, and one of our teachers said, "Just don't pay me until you can." And so her sacrifice allowed us to get off the ground. We had a gala in the first month of our first year of existence, which I would never recommend for anybody to do. But we were able to make enough money in that gala to get us through the year. But it was fundraising, but our network was so small at that time. Like, nobody had heard of us. Nobody knew it. And that was the biggest challenge, is that we just weren't out there. Like, nobody knew who Divine Mercy Academy was. And so the effort to try to expand our network, and the way I strategized that was, my employee costs were sunk cost. I was going to pay them that money no matter what. But any money I could get in from students coming in was money I could offset that. So I was wheeling and dealing with every family that came in, that if they needed financial aid, if they had talents and abilities that they could provide for the school. Every family that came into our network broadened our network and expanded the talents, abilities, particular donors, additional students. And all of those, and each one of those things communicates strength to other people, right? And so even if I was only getting, say, $2,000 in tuition from a student because a family had a tremendous financial need, that was still one more family and one more student, and we were that much stronger and were able to grow as a result of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it was really thinking very much outside the box and wheeling and dealing and just trying to find creative ways to get people involved, to get them engaged, to join the school. And
it's obviously working, right? We're coming up on the 5th annual gala.
Yes.
So tell me about that. What's it been like to grow, and what's been your favorite thing about the whole process?
Yeah. So our first gala was, again, it was one of those things where you just kind of so embarrassed. The first one, we had, I think 100 people there. We were at Chartwell Country Club. We had a guest speaker. I think we brought in like $30,000. We spent 15 of that putting it on, and so it's
profitable.
It was profitable. Yes, absolutely. Our latest one, we raised something in the neighborhood of $475,000 at our last year, and we're hoping for 560 this year. So the Gayla is now a very professional operation, and that's because we have parents who have those abilities. They've got a background. We have one who's got a background fundraising for the American Heart Association, putting on nice professional events that, raising $1 million. So we're bringing in parents with that type of expertise, others who love interior decorating or putting on events, others who are fantastic at just procuring baskets. And so it's just bringing in and identifying what are those talents and abilities that people have that give them energy in life, and then putting them in a place where they can use those things and put them at your disposal or disposal of the school. And so the event, our Gayla now attracts over 300 people from the area, and it's a great opportunity to build community and to say, hey, to showcase the beautiful things that are going on. We have a video every year that just kind of highlights the kids. Our kids are young, so it's hard to bring them out in the evening and show them off because we're so proud of them. But to show a video, take a camera into the school and just show them, these are the amazing things and these are the amazing stories that are happening every day in the school. We want to share those with you, and we want to inspire you that what's going on here in Pasadena is really special. It's very exciting, and we're on the leading edge of this revolution, this revamping, this renaissance of education, and we want you to see the beauty and to join in and to what we're doing and to support our efforts, and that resonates with a lot of people, and so it's a great celebration.
Yeah, as a parent with 2 kids in the school, it's certainly one of the things that attracted us to it. But I hear that frequently from other parents, and not only are you able to have other parents help you, which I love being able to be involved, but the transparency too, to see what's happening in the schools, which is something that I think is not happening currently in the public schools. But I think we got an email from the teachers just the other day about, okay, at this time, 5th grade is going to be putting on a play, come in and see it. And then kindergarten. So it's really neat to see that and to be able to see what's actually happening in the schools. And like you said, building that community, which certainly I don't know, it feels totally different than my experience as a kid going to schools. Not to say it was bad, but I really do appreciate what you're doing. Knowing what you know now and having accomplished, and I'm sure there's a lot more that you're aspiring to accomplish given what you've had to go through to get this far. Share a little bit about those dreams of where you see DMA in the next 5-10 years, and then we'll close out with if you could go back in time and tell yourself, some advice getting started more along as an entrepreneur, what would that be? Yeah,
great question. So right now we're realizing our dream piece by piece. So we're in the middle of a negotiation for a long-term lease at our current location at St. Jane Francis for 10 years, which is amazing. We've been on a year-to-year lease every year. That's been hard to think we might have to move every year. So that's wonderful. The second thing that's happening right now, which is amazing, is we are opening a second grade at Divine Mercy Academy. And so that was our dream, and our goal was to have 2 classes per grade from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. One of boys and one of girls. We'll start maybe 3rd grade, 3rd grade, splitting them up. But we wanted to do that for 5 years, and now it's happening this year. We're so excited about it. And so that's happening. But our dream and vision for the school is to be a center of just classical excellence, where here in Pasadena, we're revitalizing the area. We are a destination location for people who want an education. And that's happening right now. People from all over the county are coming to our school. As far as Bowie, Davidsonville, west of Columbia, people are coming up from Baltimore City are coming in. And then we've got an increasing population of people from the local area who are coming to the schools. They're seeing that we exist there and they want to be a part of it. And so that dream is coming to reality. And we are already a name that people across the country recognize, Divine Mercy Academy. We've had a lot of media exposure. And so we are becoming very rapidly a leader in classical education in the movement. And there are only about 300 of these schools across the country. And our name is one of the top ones there, which is fantastic. So, and we want to help schools around the country start up, people who, like myself, who want to start schools like ours. We want to plant other Divine Mercy Academies and help others start schools wherever they are. And so that's our dream and our vision for the next 10, 15, 20 years. As far as what would I go back and advise myself, I had no idea what maybe a business plan looks like or a strategy, right? Not ever having, 20 years in the military, I had no business experience whatsoever. So it's like, some, young man or woman in high school just figure out, well, I want to do this thing. What do I do? I would have recommended that I meet with somebody who is a savvy business person, a veteran, and just say, how would I plan out a business? What are the things that I would need and the expertise that I would need in order to run a good business? Like what's important to have in place, and some of those things are, maybe it's accounting, if it's recruitment, if it's, HR policies, whatever it is, marketing, all of those things that are really necessary. And then what should that look like in my first year and my second year? What's most important? What should I be focusing on as I get going? And how do I grow this and how do I manage the finances in a way that's great for my customer, in our case, the families, but also allows me to have a viable business at the same time, because it doesn't do any family any good if we have to close the doors. And we've been very, very blessed at Divine Mercy Academy. Every year we finished in the black by some miracle. We've started the year in the red looking at this. This is going to be a rough year, but by the time the year is done, God has provided. There's been so much generosity out there that we've always ended in the black. Sometimes by a little bit, but we've always ended in the black. And so we've been kind of had that enviable, first 5 years. Not only have we existed, because I think 80% of businesses close in the first 5 years. Not only have we still in existence after 5 years, but we've got plenty of money in the bank, moving forward. So it's been really good. So that's what it would be. Paint the big picture for me as far as what does a successful business look like. That way I understand and I can find those people who have expertise in those areas, and they can help continue to advise and kind of nuance and fine tune our strategies in those areas.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. I'm very much a planner and risk averse, and it sounds like you're going to be able to kind of create the blueprint for other people who aspire to start up their own school. So that's really cool too. Congratulations on all your success so far. We certainly appreciate and love that you're here in Pasadena, and hopefully for the long term for other people to have that option. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And best of luck to you and success in the future.
Thank you, James.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Pasadena Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Real Pasadena is your local online source where we cover the real news and highlight the real people impacting our community. Be sure to check us out at realpasadenamd.com, where you'll also find all the show notes and additional episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well, my friends.